So I am slightly late to the party now. Time zones always make it a little bit tricky down here in Australia, but Battlefield Comms tweeted out an article yesterday titled Open Beta Debrief, running through some of their key learnings from the beta and some of the changes they'll be making, and it has sent the community into absolute meltdowns for some reason. And so I'm going to run you guys through the changes, at least the key changes anyway, and then I do want to give my take on this at the end as well, because it is very clearly a pretty divisive topic. Now, like I said, we're going to start off with what they've actually said. I won't read through the whole article because it is pretty damn long, but there are some key talking points here. They talk about the weapons, they talk about the movement, which is the big talking point of this article. There's also some quick mentions of the maps and modes as well. So I'll quickly touch on some of those key points, but the majority of what has sent people into meltdown this morning has been to do with the movement. Now, starting with the weapons first and foremost, because I think most people actually tend to agree with these changes. They've said, we're making targeted adjustments to deliver a more consistent and rewarding gunplay experience. This includes a general pass on recoil and tap fire characteristics across all weapons, further emphasizing their unique feel and improving range differentiation. We've also made changes to encourage more controlled tap firing and burst firing, rewarding precision and weapon mastery. Additionally, the M87A1 shotgun now requires more pellets to secure a kill. We're investigating the time to kill and time to death experiences and will share an update if definitive changes are made in these areas. So I think all of that so far sounds really good to me. I think putting more of a focus on tap fire and burst fire is a really good thing for the skill gap. It means that those really skilled players are going to benefit from being able to make the most of tap firing and burst firing. And I also think that the most important thing in there is to do with the shotgun having more pellets to kill, or I should say more pellets to secure a kill. To me, that's a really good change. So that's not necessarily nerfing the damage per se. It means that up close, it should still be a one-shot kill, but it hopefully means that at more range, because less of those pellets are actually going to hit the enemy, then therefore it should be in turn pretty much nerfing the range on the shotgun. So obviously we'll have to wait and see how that pans out in the full game. Hopefully they test that a lot in labs, but at least as of right now, all of that to me sounds really, really good. Now, getting onto the movements, however, this one single paragraph has actually sent the entire community into a complete meltdown. It is kind of insane to watch. It's literally all I've been reading all morning. All I've seen on Twitter is people just genuinely crashing out over this, which is insane. Now, what they've said in the article is that movement mechanics have been adjusted to create a more balanced and traditional Battlefield experience. Momentum, especially horizontal speed carried from a slide into a jump, has been reduced. There is now a greater penalty for consecutive jumps, which lowers jump height when jumps are spammed. Firing while jumping or sliding will result in increased inaccuracy. These changes are designed to make sliding and jumping more situational, so they are no longer ideal options for engaging in gunfights, and will contribute to a gameplay pace that rewards skillful movement without becoming too fast or unpredictable. Now, like I said, that sentence or that paragraph right there has genuinely caused chaos within the community. It's been kind of crazy to see how it's actually unfolded, where people are really, really annoyed about this. Now, I will be honest, I actually agree with the general sentiment that a lot of these people are making, where I actually feel the movement was in a pretty much perfect spot in the beta, and I don't think it needed changes. So I do agree with that. I think this is kind of unnecessary at the end of the day. But I think, as sort of always happens in the Battlefield community, people are taking the tiniest little thing and turning it into some astronomical issue that is going to ruin the game, and it's going to be a flop, and we all hate Battlefield again now. So it's been kind of weird to see. To me personally, these changes barely change anything. Like I said, I don't think it needed these changes, so I am sort of on that side still, where I think it's kind of pointless to make these changes. But I think people are over exaggerating and just seeing movement nerfs equals bad, rather than actually reading into what it says. They're talking about momentum carrying from a slide into a jump and reducing that. That is like a very situational thing, and I don't think it hardly affects the gameplay at all, in my opinion. And that's coming from someone who is one of those annoying, like, slide cancelling idiots that run around like a psycho. That is me. I've been playing Warzone for 5 years. I run around like a dickhead doing the whole slide cancel thing, or in Battlefield, it's more of a jump into a slide into a jump. It's all the same thing. I do that. And even then, I'm not at all worried about this change. I don't think it really changes anything. other than a few very select situations. I think also having a penalty for consecutive jumps, lowering the jump height as you spam the jump. So in your first jump, it'll be the normal height. And then I guess every jump after that, it might reduce by say 20%. That's pretty normal. That's done in a lot of games out there. A lot of shooters have that mechanic. And I think if you can just spam jumps over and over and over again, like 10 times, I don't think that is necessarily best for the game. Now, I also don't have an issue with that. I'm not one of those people who's against like making the most of movement tech. I actually enjoy doing jump shots and stuff like that myself. But again, I don't think it's that bad. You shouldn't need like 10 jumps in a row to be able to do what you need to do. If you're trying to spam jumps to make the most of that, usually it only takes 1 to 3 jumps to sort of throw your enemies off while you're in a gunfight and secure the kill. So to me, that doesn't really make a change either. Lastly, firing while jumping or sliding, resulting in increased inaccuracy. I am a little bit more understanding of why people are a bit annoyed by this one, because to me personally, the penalty you got already in the beta for jumping and then trying to shoot an ADS, it was already pretty significant. I feel like you borderline couldn't do that. So it is kind of weird that they're actually increasing that inaccuracy. And so this is one area where, again, I do sort of agree with what people are saying, but again, not to the extent that people are truly melting down over this. I've seen some insane tweets this morning from some fairly notable people within the Battlefield community, whether they're creators or just people who are often online on Twitter and stuff like that, or on Reddit. I've seen bordering on meltdowns, which is absurd. So again, while I do think that change isn't really necessary, I think it was already in a decent spot. It doesn't negatively affect the game, in my opinion, because the firing while jumping or sliding was already bad. So making it worse doesn't actually really affect the game that much, in my opinion. But maybe that's just me. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that down below as well, so be sure to leave a comment. But to me personally, these changes don't really make that big of a difference. I feel like this will change the game like 1 to 2% at most, and I think that people are really blowing this out of the water when it really doesn't need to be. Now, Florian, or Drunksy, who is essentially one of the developers, who is also a very good player himself, he's a former professional player, he has given us some more context on this as well. So I'm going to read through some of his tweets here. He says, "It's difficult to give a feel of what we're doing through a blog post, but the movement changes are far from drastic. They're very localized adjustments to specific parts of movement where things could get too extreme. We want to retain depth and skill expression with movement." So that tweet alone is a very good sign. They want to keep the depth and skill expression when it comes to the movement. So that shows me they're clearly not going to nerf it too much. He followed on to say, "Movement is also getting more responsive in general in places that have felt a bit clunky before. So there is a lot more that is getting quality improvements and polish in this same area. Adding diminishing returns to jumping is what we're actually doing. An initial slide or an initial jump will not be affected. This is a balancing act. We believe the movement was in a pretty good spot, but some tuning in specific extremes was needed." A bit difficult to bring contrast through a blog post, but they're absolutely not drastic changes. We're still trying to retain depth to movement with some skill curve to it, just making sure it doesn't become insane. So to me personally, I had already read the initial tweet from Battlefield Comms, and while again I don't think the changes necessarily felt needed, I also don't think they're that big of a deal. And then after reading Florian's tweets, I'm even more reassured that I don't think this is as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be. Now, I could be proven wrong there. Maybe the game launches and it's just super clunky movement and they've really dumbed it down. If it is like that, I'll eat my words, and trust me, I'll be the first person to roast the Battlefield Studios and tell them to put it back to where it was, because to me the movement felt really decent in the beta. But I do genuinely believe people are just massively overreacting with this. It's not only a lot of creators out there, but I'm seeing like Charlie Intel and IGN and like Games Radar and stuff doing articles about this, saying like Battlefield 6 devs are nerfing movement and players aren't happy about it, and all those sorts of toxic headlines that are just going to cause even more chaos within the community. And it's crazy how we do finally have what I personally think is a good Battlefield game, at least it feels it so far, and still people are just going to melt down about absolutely anything. So it is a bit of an interesting topic. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on it once the game launches. Like I said, if it's terrible, I will be the first to let EA, DICE, and all of the studios know that it needs to revert, but I do think that people are just massively overreacting. But I am keen to hear your thoughts, like I said, so be sure to leave a comment down below. And obviously, if there are any more updates through labs or through tweets like this, then I'll keep you guys updated right here on the channel as well. But that is going to do it for this one. Thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.